next. So, Max Olson, who will hopefully join us on the Thursday, his schedule right now with all this transfer portal, that's what he aces at. 5 teams to get off to a good start. Number 1. That does not include anything today. Number 1, Texas Tech. Absolutely going to the buyers in this cycle, determined to assemble one of the best portal classes. So they lose a 5-star receiver to A&M. There is some attrition, and yet they have absolutely done it, and they've done it methodically with exactly what they need, even though they still want to add some more.
Yeah, they've gotten off to a nice start. I mean, it's very early, but as far as the people through the first, 6-7 days of this thing, getting probably closer to 10 now at this point, whatever it's been, through those first few days, it's been a lot of Texas Tech. So, yeah, they should be excited about the start they're off to. They've addressed some major needs, as you mentioned, the secondary and the offensive line in particular. But they've also, accounted for the loss of a Micah Hudson. And I think the sentiment I get from most of their fan base, and it's the right tack to take because, there's no crying over spilt milk, right? Like, what good does it do you to sit there and bemoan, oh, my God, Micah Hudson's not here anymore? And, he didn't do much when he was there, whether it be injury or whatever you want to chalk it up to. They're good receivers that they already had on campus that were already in front of him that he didn't really have any reason to hop over. They had a good wide receiving group, and so that didn't work out, but I don't see people crying over that. They've moved on pretty quickly from that and have now turned the narrative from losing a 5-star to being, I guess, one of the hotter teams in the portal through these first few days. And I think that's clear through the number of pickups. But, yeah, you look at the positions of need. You look at where some of those guys kind of ranked in terms of the interest nationally, and they picked up some guys that a lot of other teams wanted. So they clearly had a plan in place. They've got whatever it else is that you need in place, the money figures or whatever, but the approach is obviously doing them really well right now, and they're scoring a ton of commits. And so, yeah, I think it's an exciting start to the offseason that really started to get exciting when you had the coaching changes with Zach Kitley not being your choice. He gets a head coaching job, but then you do make the decision to move on defensively, so you revamp your coordinators, and I think both the hires that they landed on with Sheil Wood coming up from Houston and then Mac Leftwich from San Marcos, I think you feel like both of those guys are on paper upgrades or at least exciting, refreshing hires compared to who you had prior to that. So that's going well, and I think, too, when you've put yourself in this position now to go and win 9 games for the first time under Joey McGuire, there's actually something out there in year 3 to say, like, all right, we took another step forward. We didn't just finish 8-5 again. Now they've got to win that game, right, to make sure that they get that 9th win. But there is that opportunity that's out there to take another step closer to 10 wins and then so on and so forth. And I think they understand that the Big 12 is a very wonky conference and that you need to be ready to go all in here in year 4 with Joey McGuire and go and try to seize this bad boy. And so it looks like that's what they're doing between the coordinators they've hired and some of the moves they've already made early on in the transfer portal. I think you're identifying Tech, and I think Max probably said something to this effect, but you're identifying them early on as a team that's pushing a lot of chips in the middle of the table and is really looking to strike big in 2025. And I think regardless of whether they win their 9th game or they finish 8-5, you next year, and I think especially with these moves being made, you want to see them now go and grab it a little bit more, right? Like you want to see them play in Arlington next season. It's year 4. It's not do or die time by any means. There's no hot seat or anything like that, but I do think you want to see them make a move like you've seen some other teams make moves next year, and they're lining it up to do that with where they started so far.
All right, so also Garrett Ross on this list, your LSU Tigers. It says already collected quite a few high-impact players on offense. They landed one of the most productive playmakers in Berrien Brown, the wide receiver, Kentucky. Oklahoma tight end Bauer Sharp. They also picked up Nebraska's Jamari Butler, who's an edge rusher, among others. So, in fact, Mansour Delane, the number 1 ranked cornerback that was a part of ESPN. So your Tigers have beefed up a little bit.
Yeah, this was something that you kind of expected heading into the offseason. There had to be a lot of attrition on the roster. I think they did an excellent job of turning over in the secondary, which has been an issue all year long. You did a good job by bringing in 2 edge rushers to fill the void that is going to be left behind. You still don't know if Harold Perkins is going to be back next year, if he's going to elect to go to the draft. And then today you added more receiver depth than Destin Hill from Florida State. So LSU's doing everything they can. And then Brian Kelly put out that $1 million match for NIL. I just saw a while ago that somebody else has matched that as well. So they've had 3 people match Brian Kelly. So they're starting to roll in the NIL money to address the issues to get the ball rolling back on track for where LSU should be.
I want to tell you this, you guys. I was listening to a college football show yesterday afternoon for a second. Well, I guess it was in the evening because I'd gotten home. There was actually somebody who criticized Brian Kelly for his $1 million match. They said, hey, why would he have to have it matched? What he was trying to do was spark some people, correct? Right. It wasn't like he was trying.
Right. The whole point's to raise as much money as possible. It's not to say like, hey, Brian Kelly donated $1 million, let's stop there. It's like, hey, how can we make $1 million, $2 million? So there's been 3 matches, so what, they've got $4 million, is that right? If you were to So that's why. It's very simple, actually.
All 3 matches at $1 million apiece?
Yeah, people have matched him $1 million.
So that's very simple. Like, so you'd rather have $1 million than $4 million?
Yep.
Or $5 million, $6 million? That's the thing. It's unlimited, too. I mean, unless there's a little caveat that I'm not aware of. But, yeah, so that's – well, I guess matching, he's only going to put up $1 million. But I don't know, like, if 100 others put up $1 million, does he – throw in some more? Either way, like, he's got $4 million.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I'm thinking about the matching part of it. But yeah, the $4 million from the $1 million that he put forth, I think you're kind of crazy if you're looking to put a negative spin on that or look at that as anything but a positive. And it clearly worked because people are matching, and you've got $3 million that you didn't otherwise have. So yeah, I think that's kind of a weird criticism.
I think one of the programs that seems to do about as well as anybody when it comes to the portal is Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. Scooped up 3 Arkansas transfers. I did see a writer or somebody in media that covers Arkansas even almost like wondering, boy, those guys left pretty quickly. Was there any tampering involved? I'm just bringing up that was one of the reactions. They got another edge rusher from Nebraska in Princeville. Uman Manea, also
not even close.
How do you say it?
I think it's more like Human Milan, but yeah, Princeville Human Milan and his brothers on the Ole Miss roster, and so there was an easy connection there to make. But yeah, he was a guy who I think he and I know his brother Princely for sure was recruited by Baylor and various others during his high school days. So that's where I remember him from. But yeah, I think it's Human Milan, but I might be butchering it as well. But I know it's closer than what you spit out. But there's a lot of tough names we've come across here in the last couple of months. We've all butchered to different extents. But those U's especially.
Yeah.
Uiagalelei, Human Milan, those are the tougher ones.
Who's the other one that I finally got Tua. Tagovailoa.
That's not Nico. You struggle with
Nico
Iamaleava.
Yeah, him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's been some tough names, but yeah, that Human Milan. He's from Nebraska. I mean, that was a good get for Matt Rule.
He lost both those edge rushers.
Joining his brother there in Oxford.
Nebraska got a long snapper, so that's good. Believe me, that cost him a couple of games. Now,
well, there's a big commit that came down from the Big 12 to Ole Miss. I don't know if you were going to mention that because it just happened in the last few minutes, but I'll say it because this is a player I've talked about at great length. Deshaun Stribling, wide receiver at Oklahoma State, has committed to Ole Miss, so he is joining the Rebels and that haul for Lane Kiffin and company, and I think that is a tremendous pickup for the Rebs. I liked him a lot. I think even in a pretty dark year otherwise in Stillwater, that he was a guy who flashed some big plays and some talent. So I didn't like that loss in terms of Oklahoma State, but I do love that pickup in terms of Ole Miss and them adding to their other couple handfuls of transfers they've already brought in. So, yeah, that was in the last 30 minutes or so. Deshaun Stribling from Oklahoma State to Ole Miss.
And they're also still involved in that Eric Singleton, the wide receiver, Georgia Tech, who's a fantastic player. And then Justice Haynes, the Alabama running back that is in the portal too. Minnesota, P.J. Fleck leading the way with 10 commitments already from the transfer portal, more than any Power 4 program as of Monday morning. So that's yesterday. I told you it didn't count today. Got A.J. Turner from Marshall, Darius Taylor, also Cameron Davis of Washington, among many others. Zach Pyron, former Baylor commit, who then went to Georgia Tech. He now is headed to Minnesota. And Rashawn Lawrence from Stony Brook, a very highly rated player from a smaller school on the defensive line. Auburn, Hugh Freeze, got his quarterback in Jackson Arnold. Did he? I mean, is that going to be his guy?
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean,
why else would you go get him?
I saw this big hoopla over this, but is that going to be enough? Where was he ranked among the quarterbacks in the portal?
He's got to be pretty high up there. I mean, I don't know what impression you're under in terms of like the guys.
I'm under the impression Oklahoma's offense sucked and they were 6-6.
Yeah, but their OC got fired and they're doing a whole revamp on that side of the ball. I'm under the impression that he was a 5-star quarterback less than 2 years ago, and Hugh Freeze typically seems to know what he's doing now. He didn't have any answer at quarterback this year with Peyton Thorne, so no, this isn't an exact science, but in terms of you needed a quarterback, you go out and get a quarterback. I don't know who else you were going to go out and get that was going to be the level of Jackson Arnold on paper. Now on the field, that could be something different entirely. Well, that's the whole game here, is everything's a crapshoot when you're picking up players in the portal, but I mean, there's not a Cam Ward out there. There's not a guy like that. So
well, there is now, right? But maybe not with Mateer.
Well, yeah, there's him, but he's basically all but sharpied to Oklahoma right now, and I don't know what interest. I mean, what if he didn't have interest in Auburn? What if Auburn called him and said, "Hey, John Mateer," and he said, "Screw you guys, I'm going to Norman."
I maybe don't think I like Jackson Arnold, what he did at well, he was at Gaia, right? He was fantastic. I was surprised when I first saw him play at Oklahoma that it just didn't work out, and you wonder if that was because he wasn't ready. The offense was just bad. That's why they also changed coordinators eventually. There were times when I was like, man, I think he's got it. And maybe that's what Hugh Freeze will get him to do now he's at Auburn.
Well, he didn't just lose talent. I mean, he didn't have the best coaching, clearly. He also didn't perform the best. And I don't know, he could be a complete wash in college football. And if he is, then he is. But I think I'm not the biggest fan in the world of Hugh Freeze either. But in terms of making a move, like, yeah, I think that's a splash. In terms of the guys available, a lot of the other players out there had already committed. So in the grouping of guys who are still out there and available, he makes a lot of sense for them, and I think is a good pickup on paper. And I will say on paper a lot this offseason, because a lot of these guys being celebrated these first few days are not going to be as great as they are, the day that they commit to you. But I do think that one makes sense and is a good risk worth taking. And if it doesn't work out, well, then that's going to be more on Hugh Freeze and maybe be part of the reason why he's out of Auburn, Alabama sooner rather than later, if he can't nail down that quarterback position, because that's the least he should be able to do.